Here we are. We are back with Chapter 8 of Dr. Stephen Lucas's textbook, The Art of Public Speaking. 13th edition, and Chapter 8, Supporting Your Ideas. If you had a chance to take the little hiatus with me and learn about gathering supporting materials, I hope you got something out of that, particularly how to cite your sources in written format. We're going to talk here about a little more how to do that, and then we're also going to talk about how to cite your sources orally, since of course we are giving speeches. So, supporting materials in a speech include a couple of different things: examples, statistics, and testimony. Examples are specific cases used to illustrate an idea. They can be in 3 different types: a brief example, an extended example, and a hypothetical example. A brief example is a specific case that's referred to in passing to illustrate a point. Dr. Lucas has an example in his textbook and in his PowerPoint of a brief example.
Many of us are familiar with prominent Chicanos and Chicanas.
You can listen to that if you have a chance. An extended example is a story, narrative, anecdote, something developed at length to illustrate a point. I have troubles with these. Why? Because I like to tell stories. I like to tell long stories. I'm not sure why. My sister has a sign that says something about, if you're Irish, there's no such thing as a short story. Well, whatever the case may be, that's an example. Ha! Get it?
One friend called him the funny.
Then there's also the hypothetical example. And this is an example describing a fictitious situation. Why would we not want to use hypothetical examples? Well, the reason that we don't want to use hypothetical examples, at least not very often, is because, well, they're not real. So we should try to find another example to use more often so that the hypothetical examples don't weigh down our speeches. If you said hypothetically, some people might even just stop listening to you.
Imagine you're at the...
So, tips for using examples in your speeches. You want to clarify your ideas, reinforce your ideas, personalize your ideas, make vivid, richly textured speeches, and practice delivery of your examples to enhance the speech. Examples are an excellent way to help people better understand the point in your speech.
Remember...
Another way to make a point in your speech is one of people's favorite ways, and that is to use statistical measures. Okay, so using statistics is sometimes a really good idea, and sometimes it just bores the heck out of your audience. We are, however, going to cover statistics so that you have some idea of how to best use them. 3 ideas that will help you to best understand the statistics you are gathering is mean, median, and mode. Mean is the average value of a group of numbers. Median is the middle figure in a group once figures are ordered from highest to lowest. And mode is the number occurring most frequently in the group. Really, you only need to know those to know how good the statistics are that you are looking at. Tips for using statistics in public speaking. Use them to quantify the ideas. However, use them sparingly so as not to bore your audience. Make sure to identify your sources so that we know that the statistics came from a good place. You want to explain them thoroughly, not just flash the numbers in front of your audience and hope they understand what they mean. You want to round them off. You don't want to say 1.176 million. Maybe you could just round that up to 1.2 million. It'd be easier. Or even roughly 1 million. I know, If you're a statistical person, that might not make sense. But in public speaking, you don't have time to give every decimal point of every number. It could drag out your speech for a long time, and you will have lost your audience long ago. You also should use visual aids when using statistics. This way, you can gesture to them, point to the numbers, use graphs and charts to make it easier for people to understand the statistical information that you are providing. Another way to draw in your audience, to provide information to them, to bring in additional source materials is through testimony. Testimony is quotations or phrases used to support your point. Expert testimony is testimony from recognized experts. I gave expert testimony in a court hearing when I was a foster parent. As a foster parent, I also had a master's degree in child, youth, and family studies. So when I was put on the stand in the court hearing, it was in an expert status. So they asked me questions having to do with development of children because I had a master's degree in that. Well, I still have a master's degree in that, but now I also have a PhD in communication. So if you wanted an expert in communication, I might be your gal.
Let it nurture.
There's also peer testimony. Testimony from ordinary people with first-hand experience and insight. We see peer testimony a lot on TV. Definitely after a natural disaster, they're always asking the people who were part of the disaster, a tornado, a flood, a hailstorm, you name it. Those are the people providing that peer testimony. Sometimes I wish they would have taken public speaking courses first, though, so they really know how to get their point across. However, if I was in the middle of a tragedy, my thoughts might be all jumbled up too. But that's an example of peer testimony. A direct quotation is testimony presented word for word. So if you are going to give a direct quote from a particular expert, particular author, particular person, you definitely want to cite the materials out loud. So you could say something like, according to Dr. Heidi Guggisberg-Connors, the best way to cite sources is blah, blah, blah. In an article I read in the New York Times on November 1st, it states blah, blah, blah. I don't have to give all of the details, but enough so that if you wanted to find the article or if you wanted to talk to the expert, as a person in the audience, you certainly could do that. Do not take quotes out of context. We don't want you to distort statements by removing the words or phrases around it. This happens often, unfortunately, in the media today. So, quotations are taken out of context. People sound like they've said things that they haven't really said, and it's just a disaster. Please, don't do that. Do, however, feel free to paraphrase. Restate a source's ideas in your own words. You still have to tell us where you got the information and from what source you got the information, but you can just say it in your own words rather than trying to memorize word for word what that person had to say. Tips for using testimony. Use quotes or paraphrases accurately. Use qualified sources like we talked about in some of my other videos. Use unbiased sources as much as possible. There is a way to find out whether a publication is left-leaning or right-leaning or sponsored by an educational institution. So try to find unbiased sources. And definitely, always identify your sources. Next, about citing sources orally. This is what I was just trying to show you. You can give the name of the document, the author and or sponsoring organizations, the qualifications of the author and or the sponsoring organization, and the date that you found the materials. An example of an oral source citation is as follows. The Minneapolis Star Tribune of January 31st, 2018 quotes Chris Nowinski, co-founder of the Concussion Legacy Foundation, on the dangers of youth tackle football. Children, he says, were never intended to be hit in the head 500 times in 3 months every year while their brain is going through incredible development. Whew, that's a scary statistic. But it'd be a great speech about football if you're willing to give it.